Disclaimer.
The following content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained in this presentation constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by BTC Media, the Let's Talk Bitcoin Network, or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is the Bitcoin Magazine podcast, and I'm Graham. Today we've got an interview with Nathan Hadley. He's the man behind Bitcoin Magazine's price analysis, and you probably know him best as Bitcoin Schmitcoin. Dave, what did you and Nathan have to talk about?
Well, to be honest, I've never really tried to understand price analysis. It always just kind of seemed like, astrology to me or something. And I've known about Bitcoin Schmitcoin since 2017 during the ICO bubble. A lot of people and projects have come and gone from the industry since then. And I think the fact that he's stuck around must be a testament to something that he's doing that is working. I also just really want to know what a day in the life of a price analyst is like.
Cool, man. Sounds awesome. Let's hear the interview.
My background is actually aerospace engineering. I did that for a few years, and while sitting in my cubicle one day, I heard Andreas Antonopoulos get on Joe Rogan's podcast back in like 2013 or something like that. And he started talking about Bitcoin, and I was peripherally like keeping tabs on Bitcoin for years. I would see it fluctuate in price, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell is going on here. So I was just going to steer clear. And then one day I just set a bunch of price alarms on some random, like back in the day, there were like no, I say back in the day loosely, but like back in the day, like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, there weren't like good apps to track price. So I downloaded some sketchy app that was like, send me an SMS text message whenever Bitcoin hits X price. And I set it, and like I forgot about it for like a couple years.
Yeah.
And then Bitfinex got hacked, and all of a sudden my phone started blowing up with price notifications that I didn't even know that I set. And I was like, I guess today's the day that I finally buy Bitcoin. I figure out what I'm doing here. So back in 2016, I started teaching myself how to, just do basic stuff like reading charts and all that stuff. It's kind of hard to really, like, if you try to figure out how to chart markets by yourself, it's pretty difficult. Most people are full of shit. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah. Swear
Okay.
away.
Yeah. Like 99% of people are just hucksters that are trying to steal your money, or they have like one unique way of doing it. So I kind of like developed my own strategy, which I think most people end up doing ultimately. Like no one really follows one particular school of thought, like to the letter. So right around 2017 is really when I felt I had a decent enough grasp around it. And I started posting it publicly to ETH Trader. And then that started getting a little bit more traction. And then people were telling me I should post my stuff on Twitter. So I started posting it on Twitter. And then I forget who it was, but someone from Bitcoin Magazine reached out to me, and they were like, hey, would you like to, write a couple articles, a week for us? And so I started writing articles back when Bitcoin Magazine wasn't just Bitcoin. It was like, it would cover altcoins sometimes. But yeah, so I just started from there and kind of just taught myself along the way.
Yeah, that was Elliot Feeney. Shout out to Elliot.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So back to the technical analysis. Did you start off working with Bitcoin or were you looking at like other coin markets?
So I first started working through just Bitcoin, and I only when I first started trading Bitcoin, other alts like Litecoin and Ether, they were severely much lower than they are now. I know like some of the people that are listening now probably, even though it's only been like 3 years, like when I first started trading, Ether was worth like $8.
Yeah.
And so when I first went to go buy my first Bitcoin, back in 2016, I saw it on the Coinbase app and I was like, what the hell is this? So I started looking into it. And eventually after, I think it was like January or February of 2017, there was like all these rumblings of like the Bitcoin ETF and all this stuff. Like the first batch of like news hype for ETF approval / rejection kind of stuff started hitting the market, and Bitcoin started taking off. And after it got rejected, there was a humongous price. I think it retraced like 50% in like an hour. It was just like an absurd correction. And once that happened, I was like, okay, I really need to figure out what I'm doing, because I should have had a plan for this. And part of my plan was I'm going to start looking into other coins. And so I started looking at the Ether chart, and I realized that this was like something that no one was really talking about. And the people who were talking about it were Bitcoin maximalists who were saying it was a scam and all this stuff. So I was like, of course, if everyone's saying this is a scam, I'm definitely going to look into this because this sounds like, I was like, this sounds like someone has to be wrong here because the chart looks really good and someone's really butthurt about it. So I want to be on the winning side of this. So I started looking into it, and then I started dipping my toes into Ether shortly thereafter, like around March of 2017 or something.
Yeah, and how much are you charting Ether these days?
Oh, every day.
Really?
Yeah. So one of the main things that I trade is Ether right now. I don't post about it or talk about it as much just because I think a lot of people are gun shy about trading alts.
For
just due to,
for good reason.
yeah. Like they're highly volatile. And if you don't know what you're looking at, people get really married to their investments and they kind of just get a sore taste in their mouth about trading alts. But if you know what you're looking at and you're not married to your position and you're willing to only trade something over the course of like a week or two rather than like a month or two or like a year or two, then it can be really profitable. So I primarily chart Bitcoin. I trade it, but I use it to gauge my bias on like other altcoins that I trade a little bit more frequently these days. If Bitcoin's in a bear market, I'm not even going to touch the altcoins, but if Bitcoin's in a bull market, then I'll be trading altcoins for sure.
Yeah, and that was going to my next question is how much does the Bitcoin price affect, or at least your predictions affect your decisions that you make on other coins?
So the best comparison I can make is the Bitcoin market is the equivalent of like the S&P 500.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not an index, it is a single coin, but it functions much the same way. If Bitcoin's going up, then it's like kind of binary. It's like if Bitcoin's going up, then altcoins may go up, but they may also go down. There's never really been a point when altcoins go up and Bitcoin goes down and altcoins keep going up. So Bitcoin is really the gatekeeper. It's the highest liquidity, highest market cap. It's the name brand that most people know. When Bitcoin's doing well, the entire crypto market does well. When Bitcoin does bad, does poorly, the entire crypto market does poorly. So I'm always looking at, even if I'm not even looking trade Bitcoin specifically, I'm always charting it because it is the gatekeeper for all of the other markets.
Yeah, and real quick, Bitcoin Schmitcoin is how we all know you, but
Sure.
your real name's Nathan, right?
Yeah, Nathan.
Yeah. So, Nathan, are you still working in aerospace?
No. So back in June or July of 2017, I started doing this stuff full time. I write pretty regularly for Bitcoin Magazine. When the markets are moving, obviously I'm going to put out more content, but I at least do 2 submissions a week, doing video or text content. And I'm also trading, and I run a trading group as well. So
Yeah. So Nathan, what's your day look like in terms of work? Like what do you do?
I ask myself that every day. What am I doing? It really depends.
I do too, man.
It really depends. If the markets are trending, then I'm going to sit in front of my computer and try to capitalize on intraday stuff. Intraday meaning a position that I will hold for no more than like a day or two. And I'll be using intraday timeframes like hourly or 4-hour candles to gauge my bias on those trades. But usually I wake up around 9 or 9:30. If I'm really anxious about getting in front of the computer, like maybe Bitcoin's at a really key level, then I'll wake up around 8. But I try to wake up around 9 or 9:30 because the New York Open for stocks opens at 9:30 Eastern time, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, because you can see a lot of price movement for the day kind of gets determined right at the opening hours of the New York Open, and vice versa at the New York close at 4 p.m. Eastern time. A lot of price action either tends to take off, like it's been consolidating for the day and it'll break out once the New York close happens, or you'll see some sort of reversal. So there's there's pretty well anchored points in the day where I really need to focus and see what the market's doing, or just at minimum like check on my positions. In between those periods, I'm really just killing time. There's a large portion of the day where if someone were just watching me, they would think I'm just the laziest person in the world and I'm just staring at the computer waiting for it to do something. So I'm just really just sitting there waiting to kill the time between those two chunks of time. And then in the evening, I've noticed that there tends to be right around the daily close at 8 p.m. Eastern time, there tends to be some activity. So I mean, if anyone's been watching charts for any length of time, like it's pretty well known that like the daily close, for those who don't know what that means, it's like if you use candles for your trading system, the daily close, the close of the candle happens at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So a lot of activity happens because people who trade large amounts of money don't trade on low time frames like the layman like I would do. They trade on very high time frames, and they use their bias based on the high time frames. So there tends to be a lot of market activity in and around the daily close.
So Nathan, what you do, would you call yourself a professional candle watcher or more of a hedge fund stock trader for the new internet? Which one would you take? Or maybe neither.
I don't know, man. I'm really hesitant to call myself anything just because I look at so many people that are so much better than me at what I claim to be a quote unquote professional at. I'm really hesitant to call myself a professional, trader. Although I guess technically I would be considered a quote unquote professional trader because it's, how I pay some of my income. But yeah, I mean, I guess technically I would probably prefer to say market analyst because it seems to be the least entitled, the least entitled sounding label. I feel like there's a lot of like, especially if you go on crypto Twitter specifically, there's a lot of people who are like, I'm a professional trader. And those people may or may not have just struck gold on the 2017 run. But really, when you ask them day to day, what is their view on market structure? What is their outlook? They really can't give you a very good, coherent, thought out response. And so, as far as labels go, I mean, you can call me whatever you want. The candle watcher works. I spend most of my day watching candles rather than actually trading. So I'll go with professional candle watcher.
I always thought that would be, at least in 2017, I always thought that would be a good TV show. It's just somebody watching the Bitcoin price candles.
Yeah. It's at least in 2017, the candles were moving.
Yeah.
The past like 4 months has just been like watching paint dry.
I watch your videos a lot, especially this last one, which looks like you've been pretty accurate about saying where at least will bottom out, which is around the 7,700-ish area.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, like, do you consider, like, what you're doing to me looks like technical analysis? And I was wondering if do you consider what you do technical analysis?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that fundamental analysis in crypto means nothing, especially more than any other market out there. Like whether you're trading commodities or equities or metals or whatever, more so than any other market, fundamentals don't really mean anything.
Right.
Because, aside from like something just devastating happen, like maybe SEC deems something to be illegal or they shut down an exchange or something, the fundamentals only get better. There's nothing happening with Bitcoin that it's like, oh, the fundamentals have really changed. It's like there's only more innovation taking place. Yeah, there were some hiccups. There were some arguments with like devs and stuff, but all things considered, the fundamentals are only getting better. So to sit there and say that like fundamental analysis is something that you can apply to crypto, I don't see it personally. So
And fundamental analysis essentially is like how people look at stocks or
yeah.
companies. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So like one example of fundamental analysis someone could do, someone could say, maybe they're watching a negotiation between Comcast and Disney. And they're like, man, they're going to have a really big negotiation. Someone's going to get acquired. Something's going to get acquired. Or maybe an earnings revenue is going to come out, revenue report's going to come out. And based on news and not necessarily market structure, people will buy or sell based on those events alone, which is totally legit. Like there are people that have made fortunes doing that. But in terms of crypto, maybe there's a way to do it and I'm just not doing it. So I don't want to outright say that it's not possible to do it. I just know that for me personally, what I do is I would consider to be 100% technical analysis.
Yeah. Can you explain what technical analysis is now? Because to me, it seems like it's somewhere between math and maybe BS. So like astrology forecasting.
Sure.
So like, can you please enlighten me?
Yeah, sure. So it's 100% BS. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
The general idea is that if I could sum it up into one or two sentences, technical analysis is just looking at past price behavior to try to predict future price behavior based on where the price has been. There are a lot of ways to come to these conclusions of like that's ultimately what we're doing. Some of them are BS, or I shouldn't say BS, but some of them aren't as reliable in all market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of become self-fulfilling ideas. And I think a lot of people see people just drawing lines on charts, and they're like, especially when people start drawing all these like shapes and stuff on charts, they're like, they don't understand it. They don't understand exactly what's going on. This is the best way that I've found to personally rationalize why technical analysis works. Back in 2017, when I first started doing it, or 2016 rather, in 2017 when I started publishing it, being an engineer and also just being kind of like a super skeptical asshole, I was like, this doesn't work. This looks like, it literally looks like nonsense when you see someone try to explain. And I think the reason why it seems like nonsense to most people is because most people are bad at explaining why technical analysis works, why support and resistance levels work. But if you can just think about it like this, from like a psychological and just a human being level, if you and a bunch of people all go long, say they bought a bunch of Bitcoin, I'm just going to make up some number, at $10,000, right? There is going to be, and especially if you buy it on margin, the big difference between buying something on margin or versus buying at spot is that there is quite literally a line in the sand where the exchange will confiscate your position once the price reaches a certain threshold, especially if people use things like BitMEX, which has just like insane leverage up to 100x.
Yeah, I've heard stories.
Yeah. People will they'll, rather than using proper risk management, they'll rely on their liquidation, which means that, say, for example, you went long at $10,000 for Bitcoin. If the price reaches 9,800, so that means the price dropped $200, then you'll be liquidated, which means that the exchange will then confiscate your position and they'll sell it at market value. So if you look at it in terms of where people's thresholds will be, where their maximum point of pain will be, support and resistance makes perfect sense if you're on the other side of the coin. No pun intended.
Yeah.
If you're a big player and you're trying to move large size, meaning like 7-figure, 8-figure dollar positions, you're not going to be doing what everyone else is doing. What you're going to do is you're going to push the market to liquidate the people at 9,800 so that they market sell into you. And that threshold is what creates support and resistance levels. It's where the large market makers are saying, this is the level at which we will be buying and selling, and all the zigzaggy noise in between is irrelevant. So if you can look at the market from the lens of, if I had a bunch of money, what is the most efficient way to move it? Technical analysis makes perfect sense, because it's the most efficient way to move large amounts of money without crashing the market, so that you can also make a profit. I hope that made any sense whatsoever.
Hey, real quick, we're going to pause the interview to tell you about Haven. Have you downloaded it yet? It's one of the coolest shopping apps on the market.
Haven is the world's first privacy-focused shopping app for iOS and Android. It uses several advanced technologies to keep your information private while remaining easy to use. You don't need to know how advanced technologies like crypto and end-to-end encryption work to keep your data private on Haven. All you need to know is that it just works.
You can buy and sell goods on Haven with crypto. We're talking Litecoin, Zcash, and even Bitcoin, if you're willing to spend it.
On Haven, you can even shop and chat with other users with the added comfort of end-to-end encryption, which basically means that all of your data, messaging, and personal identification, all that stuff, it's stored locally on your device. Haven is like the Craigslist for cypherpunks.
Own your own information and own your privacy without sacrificing quality. Check out Haven today.
Head over to gethaven.app/BitcoinMagPod to get $5 in free crypto today.
Graham, what was the link again?
Dave, it's gethaven.app/BitcoinMagPod.
Now, back to our interview with Bitcoin Schmitcoin.
You see a lot of strange patterns on a daily basis. Are there any moments, days, where you're, watching the Bitcoin candles, like in the past, that have stood out to you as like one of the craziest days of Bitcoin?
Oh yeah. You just talking about like
anything, man.
Oh yeah. The one that immediately comes to mind is when Bitcoin Cash rose to 50%. When it had that, I forget what month it was. It was like back in late 2017. Bitcoin Cash, the Bitcoin Cash to Bitcoin market reached like almost half, which is unheard of. Which, for those who don't know what that means, is the value of Bitcoin Cash reached half the value of Bitcoin, which is unheard of for any coin ever. It all took place over the span of like 2 weeks. I don't know if you recall that, but like it was one of the few times when Bitcoin was just dropping in price and an altcoin was being very blatantly pump and dumped. And that led into, I think, the Coinbase listing of Bitcoin Cash and a couple of other news events that ended up concluding the pump. But like that was by far the craziest like few days of trading that I can remember. At least I remember this specifically because I was watching some video with, I'll never forget this. I was watching some video of like Tone Vase, and he was talking about how if you own Bitcoin Cash, you deserve to be homeless, is the exact quote he said. And within a week, it just took off on the most epic bull run I've ever seen in my life. And he just kept saying that everyone's going to be homeless. And it just kept going and kept going. So it just goes to show you that, like, you know, crypto's a crazy place. And even if you, you know, have credentials in the market, sometimes you can be biased and not look at what the charts are actually telling you, you know?
Yeah. So you basically resist news at all costs.
I don't resist it because I'm not going to be completely naive and say that news doesn't move the market. But to say that you know how it's going to move the market is, I don't think anyone can confidently say whether. I mean, case in point, the futures market backed, you know,
Yeah.
That is probably one of the most bullish things that Bitcoin could ask for if you're a trader. Maybe not tech wise, but you know, obviously it's one of the few. For those who don't know, backed, or BAKKT, I think is the full acronym. They have a Bitcoin settled futures market, which is the first time that we've had a large credited institution have a Bitcoin settled versus a cash settled futures market. So what that means is that when Bitcoin futures settle, typically the price of the contract gets settled in US dollars. But with this exchange, when you settle the futures contract, it gets settled in Bitcoin, which means that if you're on the other end of the contract, you have to buy the Bitcoin to pay the contract. So the very nature of this thing being a live exchange or a live product is inherently bullish because it creates demand just by the very nature of settling the contract itself. And the market reaction was the next day to drop $1,000.
Does that mean that everyone's trying to short Bitcoin?
This is the tricky thing of playing news events, is that you develop a narrative in your head and then the market does something. And then so you try to understand why the market did it through the lens of the news event rather than looking at the chart and saying this was a possibility all along. I mean, like, for example, when I put out my video last week or whatever it was, you know, I talked about these price levels, having no foreknowledge of the you know, the settlements or anything with backed. And you know, the chart itself is going to tell you where it's going to go. The only thing that a news event is really good for is starting movement. It's not going to tell you where the movement's going to go. It's not going to tell you whether it's going to go up or it's going to go down. It's just going to say, you know, the market's a powder keg, you know, here's the light, and the cards will fall where they may. But when you look at the charts, they're going to tell you the most likely scenario. If it goes up, this is where it's going to go. And if it goes down, this is where it's going to go.
So like leading into that, what do you do when you have friends? Like you must have a lot of, like, especially I had this in 2017 and I'm like a very average like Bitcoin user. It's like all my friends started coming out of the woodwork asking me about what's going to happen with Bitcoin, you know, in the next, you know, by the end of the year or something like that. And I imagine you have a lot of people coming at you asking you that. Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so it's a lot less so now than it was in 2017.
Yeah.
I had people asking me October or November of 2017 if they should be, and this is like after I'd been evangelizing Bitcoin for months and months and months. Finally, at the tail end of this parabolic move, people are asking me, should I be buying? And I'm like, no, you shouldn't be buying. And they see the price keep going up. They're like, should I be buying? I'm like, no, you shouldn't be buying. Then the price doubles again. They say, no, should I be buying? And then now none of those people are asking. None of them are interested.
Yeah.
And so I don't actually deal with it as much as I did. But in general, my answer is that I don't know. When people ask me where the market's going to be in a year, I do not know, because so much hinges on what the U.S. economy is going to look like in a year, what hedging strategies hedge fund managers will be using in the event of an economic downturn. Say maybe the U.S. economy and the global economy goes into a recession. How will Bitcoin handle during a recession? I don't know. No one knows. You know, the Bitcoin hasn't been around long enough to know what it looks like in a recession. But based on the charts, it doesn't look half bad, but it could easily go south. I know that's such a non-answer. And I know like the biggest meme on the internet is like whenever you post a chart and you say something indeterminate, people always say, oh, so you're saying it could go up or it could go down. Gotcha. People think they're very clever with this sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
right now it's like pre-bull market conditions. If the market is going to break out, this is a really great time to do it. And if it did break out, all of the charts are pointing toward a healthy, sustained move, possibly a year or two.
Really?
But yeah, for sure. Like it would not surprise me to see that happen. But if Bitcoin, for whatever reason, because it's, the gatekeeper, as I said earlier, if Bitcoin doesn't get the interest that the market needs from bigger players, if the economy takes a shit, well then Bitcoin's definitely going to go down. Because if you're looking at I know that's like kind of not what people want to hear, but
I just always saw Bitcoin as sort of doing the opposite of what the U.S. economy does, for instance.
Sure, yeah. I think it's really nice to think that, but if you're looking at it from like a logical perspective, if you're a hedge fund manager and you're in charge of managing, just swaths of people's money, and it's just large amounts of money, right? And the U.S. economy is tanking. Logically, the last thing you would want to invest in is a hyper volatile asset with low liquidity. Because if the U.S. economy is going to, say the stock market starts going down for a sustained period of time, and you have investors that are like, I'm getting the hell out of Dodge and I want to be in cash, the last thing you want to be in is crypto, and especially in alts. That's why alts have been doing so poorly this past year, is because, although Bitcoin's, this is kind of where my original idea of I don't know comes from, is because Bitcoin looks good. It's doing all the things that we want to see in a healthy market. The missing piece is the altcoins. And what we want to see is as a market as a whole thrive. And that is a sign of investor confidence. That's a sign that large hedge funds aren't pulling out of the market. They're digging into the market. And right now we're kind of at this turning point where it could really, really thrive, or it could be very devastating for the crypto market. And so I think a lot of people are like, when we look at daily trade volume, it's just abysmal. It's been trending downward for months and months and months. And that can be potentially a good thing, or it can be an overall disinterest in the market as a whole, because people are scared of a potential recession. People are scared of insert fear mongering idea here.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever it
Sanctions
is.
Or
Yeah. So, if I were to have to say, is Bitcoin going to be worth more in a year than it is now? I don't know that I could confidently answer one way or the other, whether it's going to be less or worth more. I would like to say it's worth more. In isolation, I see a very strong bull market emerging, but given the other factors, we don't know how Bitcoin handles. So I don't feel confident saying one way or the other. And that's what I've been telling even my family members that have been asking me, like, should I be getting out of the stock market into crypto? I'm like, I don't know, man. The safest thing I can say to someone that's maybe sitting on the sidelines is just wait. If crypto is gonna break out and gonna go into this sustained bull run, it's not gonna be a flash in the pan. It's gonna be a sustained multi-month bull run, and there's no reason to like overexpose yourself now. If you don't feel confident and you're putting a large portion of your personal income and your personal savings into the crypto market, maybe it pays off, but maybe you'll be wishing that you'd been a little bit more patient, and instead of buying at 8,300, which it's currently sitting at, maybe you wait until it gets a bullish confirmation at like 10K or 14K. Like, yeah, you don't catch the bottom, but man, that degree of confidence is going to make you sleep a lot better at night. I guarantee you.
Yeah, that's actually not really what I expected you to say. But I wanted to touch on what sort of like what you keep saying about alts, which coming from somebody who I got involved working in this industry for Bitcoin Magazine back in early 2017, and I saw the whole alt battle, we'll call it, play out, and so much of it I was disgusted by. So I personally stay away from anything but Bitcoin. And you're saying, I hear what you're saying that about, I mean, I'm not really bringing up the discussion about whether or not like other coins have value. Like I mean, I think that's, but it sounds to me like you're saying for a healthy price ecosystem in general, there needs to be altcoin action. And I want to know if you could explain that more.
Yeah, sure. So before I do you mind if I ask you a question? So what specifically were you disgusted by? Blatant scams with like
ICO
ERC tokens?
ICO scams, and I think in general, just like the promise of it, which like I think is great that we can have like that kind of innovation, but the promise of it, and then just how much of it, at least right now, seems totally unrealized. And maybe I'm just too close at one point in the chart.
I got you. Yeah. So I'll just clarify what I was saying. So in terms of when I say a healthy market needs alts to thrive, I don't mean that they all of a sudden have use cases, and I don't mean from a fundamental standpoint that they're even worth a shit.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing about the altcoins that I'm saying is bringing intrinsic value regarding their tech or use cases or anything of the sort. What I mean is that if we're looking at a healthy, let's call this like a little crypto economy. If we're looking at a healthy crypto economy, in the most bullish of situations, you want to see people venturing into more volatile assets that have higher risk associated with them.
Right.
Because that means that they're confident in the baseline health of the market. The last thing that someone's going to do is invest in like, I don't know, insert shitcoin here. They're not going to invest in that if they think Bitcoin's not going to do well. So when we see sustained bull markets in the altcoins, that just means that, and that is one extra check in the bull column for Bitcoin itself. Just crypto across the board is strong because we see other people boosting up the market. It means fresh capital's coming into the market as a whole. We're seeing sector growth in terms of like, if you want to call like coin sectors, whatever you want to call it. Things are starting to grow. Money's coming into the ecosystem. People are starting to invest. People are starting to innovate because they want funding, and all this stuff starts to flourish because people. And this is going to be forecasted when we see things like the crypto market cap start to trend upward, and specifically the altcoin market cap. When we look at that in isolation, so it would be the total market cap minus Bitcoin. So we get the altcoin market cap. When we look at trends like that, and we see a strong upward trending market, that's when we know we're in a real bull market. When we know that capital is just continuing to come into the market, and it's not leaving the market. We don't want to see money leaving the market. There's a big difference between taking profit on a position and seeing a correction versus capital just bleeding out of the market. And that's what we don't want to see.
Right. So before we go, Nathan, can you just tell me what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks?
Next 2 weeks. Let's see.
I know you got a video coming, dude.
So if I had to guess, in the next 2 weeks, we will most likely, I'm pulling up my chart here so I can give you some dollar values.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, I would guess we, in the next 2 weeks, see a retest of 9,400. 9,400 was the level that we broke, and the market just absolutely just dropped and fell down to 77.50, the level I was talking about in my last video. If I had to guess, I would say we're going to see a retest of 9,400, and from there we'll have to see where it goes. Like right now, it's looking pretty good for a little reversal on the intraday charts. The higher time frame stuff, like the monthly charts, the weekly candles, they're not looking half bad. But we really need to, if we want to see a bullish reversal, a strong bullish reversal, we really need to come back up and reconquer this $9,400 level. I'm seeing a lot of strength on altcoins right now, on their altcoin Bitcoin ratios, specifically with Ether. And, it's up to bat. It's teeing up the ball, and it's set up for success. All we need to do is just see Bitcoin thrive. And if Bitcoin thrives, we're going to see altcoins thrive. And when altcoins thrive, the entire crypto economy is going to go up. So as long as Bitcoin holds and it doesn't keep dropping down to lower lows, I think we're going to see some pretty strong pumps on the altcoin scene. I think a lot of people have their gaze cast on Bitcoin because they were previously in alts. They were looking at, they were ignoring Bitcoin. They were getting greedy back earlier on in the year. And I think this next pump, I say pump kind of tongue in cheek, but like the next rally, if there is going to be a rally, it's going to come about via altcoins. And I think they're going to outperform Bitcoin, in the days following the rally. But I think we do see a retest of 9,400. If we don't see a retest of 9,400 and we break down this current level, that's going to be really bad. If I'm being honest, like that's going to be most likely a retest of 6,800. Like it could get really bad really quick. But right now it's holding the levels we want to see, as long as it doesn't just absolutely shit itself. It's set up for success. It just needs to actually, take the bait and go.
All right, Nathan, you might have a little bit more time and know a little bit more than me, but I think we're both going to be watching candles a lot in the next 2 weeks. So
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thank you.
And again, everybody, you can find Bitcoin Schmitcoin's price analysis on the Bitcoin Magazine website. He posts, it's weekly now, right?
Yeah, it's been weekly, but as the price moves, I'll be posting it like a couple of times per week.
Yeah, that volume.
The Bitcoin Magazine podcast is a BTC Media produced podcast on the Let's Talk Bitcoin network. You can find us over on Twitter at Bitcoin Magazine, and you can find other engaging shows over at letstalkbitcoin.com. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you next time.